Dusty, it's been 10,806 days since you managed your first game.
Really?
For this, yeah, nearly 30 years ago. From that point to now,
Yeah.
how much have you thought about this moment to manage a team that won the World
Well,
Series?
I thought about it a lot. You know what I mean? I try not to dwell on it, but try to have faith and perseverance and knowing that, you know, with the right team and the right personnel and right everything that, you know, this was going to happen. And, you know, had this happened years ago, I might not even be here. You know what I mean? So maybe it wasn't supposed to happen so that I could hopefully influence a few young men's lives and their families and you know, a number of people in the country through showing, you know, what perseverance and character, you know, can do for you in the long run. I'm hoping that I gave some people the same hope that my mom and dad, you know, gave me, that, you know, sometimes you just, it's not in your control sometimes, because there were circumstances that happened in other postseasons or World Series or calls or balls that, you know, or guys that didn't do this or did do that for and against us. So I'm just extremely happy. Hadn't really sunk in yet until I get back to Cali.
Got Clint in the third row on your left.
Is it relief? Is it joy? What's the feeling right now?
No, it's not relief. It's just sheer joy and thankfulness. You know, it's not relief at all. I mean, because everybody was talking about it more than I was even thinking about it, you know. And so, you know, I always said before that if I win one, you know, I'll win two, but you got to win one first. I mean, the one was hell to get to this point. And but it was well worth it. I'm in a great city with great people, great fans, and I got a great, you know, great ball club. And I mean, these guys, they know how to win. They come to play, no alibis, no excuses. You know, you can come in our clubhouse, you can't tell if the next day if we lost or if we won, you know. And so these guys are very consistent in their personality and the confidence that they have in themselves.
Christy in the fourth row on your right.
Hey, Dusty. Last year, before the World Series, we talked about the conversation you had with your dad after the 2002, how he said after what happened, he didn't know if you'd ever win another one, and that kind of drove you. What, are you thinking about him tonight? And what
I was thinking about him this morning when I woke up. And, you know, Game 6 has been my nemesis throughout my career, and this is Game 6. And I was like, I really didn't want to get to Game 6 again, but I was like, well, maybe this is how it's supposed to be. But, you know, my dad didn't mean anything negative when he said, you know, my dad, you know, back in the old school, there was such thing as negative motivation. You know, in the new school, negative motivation doesn't work. But, like, you know, my dad was the kind of dude that I'd score 4 or 5 touchdowns, score 30 points, and I'd ask my dad, you know, how'd I do tonight in basketball? And my dad would tell me pretty good. And I'm like, damn, Dad, I think I did great, you know. But, you know, pretty good was his way of keeping me motivated that next time I score 5 or 6 touchdowns.
Tyler in the second row.
Dusty, congratulations.
Thank you.
You succeeded as a manager right from the start. I mean, the '93 Giants, manager of the year, I'm pretty sure. But how has that perseverance changed you or improved you or made you different over these last 30 years?
Well, I mean, it's made me calmer. It's made me, you know, my 93 team won 103 games. Then in 94, we had the lockout. And then in 95, you know, they sold half the team. You know, Billy Swift and John Burkett and Will Clark and, you know, Mike Jackson and Robbie Thompson and Matt Williams and Kurt Manwaring. I mean, then I didn't understand it, but I didn't understand really the economics of baseball. And I guess they had lost a lot of money, but I always thought that we could have won 5 or 6 years more after that 93 season. And even 5 or 6 years later, I was saying hello to everybody on every team that had been on my team before, Royce Clayton and, Darren Lewis and Willie McGee. And, we had some great players at that time. And, then scuffled back and, I've had some ups and downs and some disappointments, but those disappointments make you stronger or they break you, and so this has kind of been a story of, my life where people tell me what you can't do, or even now, I won a bunch of games. My team won a bunch of games, and all I hear about is what you don't do. You don't like this, or you don't like young players. You can't handle pitchers. You can't. And I'm like, well, damn, what did I do? You know what I mean? After a while, I quit listening to folks telling me, what I can't do. And all that does is motivate me more to do it, because I know there's a bunch of people in this country that are told the same thing. You know what I mean? And it's broken a lot of people. But, my faith in God and my mom and dad always talking to me made me persevere even more. My mom, she told me a number of times, to be African American, you got to be twice as good to achieve the same thing. I heard that over and over and over. And my dad would always tell me, when I'd get in fights and stuff, and he'd tell me, what would Jackie do? And I was like, I'm not and Jackie wasn't a turn the cheek brother either. I'm damn sure not a turn the cheek of the dudes, you know what I mean? So, but, you learn to coexist with different people and then in the workplace.
Okay, Anthony in the third row.
Congratulations, Dusty.
Thank you.
How cathartic is this win, not just for you, but this organization, given the controversy and the losses here in this building in 2019 and last year?
Well, yeah, I think that's what drove this team. That's what motivated them to, the boos and the jeers that we got all over the country, it bothered these guys, but it also motivated them at the same time, and it wasn't a us against the world thing. It was more of a come together even closer type thing. You know what I mean? So, and what happened before, it'll never pass over, completely. But, we have turned the page, and hopefully we'll continue this run. Because that's the thing when I talk to James Click, and especially when I talk to Jim, he expects to win. He doesn't want to go from first to worst in a 2 or 3 year period. He wants this feeling, and I like this feeling a lot. And I always, and when I was a kid, I hated the Celtics because they won too much. They beat the Lakers all the time, and I didn't like the Yankees because they won too much. They beat the Dodgers all the time. But then when I got to be a player and a manager, I was yearning to be just like the Celtics and the Yankees. They were beating the teams. Never gets old. And when I look at Phil Jackson and I listen to him talk about how every year is a different challenge, so I've always welcomed that challenge.
Steve up front.
Congratulations, Dusty.
Thank you.
But before all this, you had achieved so much. You were viewed as a great manager before this. This didn't
By
have to
some
happen.
people.
I think by most people.
Some people.
Okay. I'll say most. We'll disagree on that.
Okay.
But this obviously is something that you want. You want to end up on top, and you have finally done it. What's going through your heart and mind right now? If you can take a slight step back. I know it's not been that long, but
I'm just grateful, really, for the trials and tribulations that you go through in order to get to this, and just grateful for my, mom and dad for being, tough on me, and also grateful for some of the enemies that helped motivate me to get to this point. You know what I mean? And with no malice or anything, because that doesn't do any good. So you just gotta do your thing. You asked me earlier, what what's kind of on my mind, and I've come to the point where, you know, I really don't care if you agree with me or not in what I do and how I do it. It's just the fact that over the years we've done it pretty good. So there ain't no sense in me trying to satisfy you. I'm just trying to satisfy those guys in the room in there and trying to satisfy my boss and get a raise sooner or later. Mm-hmm. Well, I was counting the outs. You know, I was counting the outs in the 8th and then the 9th. And then I heard my dad talking to me and my mom and my brother who passed. And, you know, Don Baylor, I was thinking of Donnie today. He's on my wall. And Hank Aaron and Joe Black and, you know, all the guys at Roy Campanella, Jim Gilliam, all the guys at Al Kaline, you know, guys that motivated me and guys that were in my corner. And I was thinking, you know, please press no drama in the 9th. And I was saying, JR, man, give me a slider. That's what I was thinking.
What, Tyler in the second row?
Dusty, you mentioned a minute ago about that lesson you learned as a kid, having to work twice as hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you about how you think where baseball is right now in terms of African American. I mean, you've set a great example as a manager, but there's still not many others.
Right.
There's fewer players now as well. How much progress do you think still needs to be made on that front?
Well, a lot of progress needs to be made. I mean, it didn't take overnight to get in this situation, and it's not going to take overnight to get out of this situation. I mean, you see how many top draft choices were African American. I mean, they're not going to rush all the kids up here at the same time if they're not ready. But you have to have them in the pipeline in order to have some. And you got to also have some African American coaches and managers in the pipeline to have more. I mean, right now, I told somebody 10 years ago that the way baseball was going, and I love my Latin brothers, but they weren't going to need any African American coaches really. You're going to need either white coaches or Latin American coaches because I try to have a diversified staff where guys can relate to anybody on the staff and go talk to them. I always had African American dude. I always had a couple Latin dudes. I always had a sophisticated college dude. I always had some country white dudes that they can go talk to. You know what I mean? Because everybody needs somebody that they can talk to and relate to. And so, we're not doing a real good job, but hopefully we'll keep talking about it. I've been saying the same thing for like 30, 40 years. I mean, how long can I say the same thing? You know what I mean? Before the change is going to come. You know what I mean? So I hope I'm around long enough, just like Jackie Robinson was, hopefully that I'd be in this position as a manager, like his speech in Cincinnati. And so I hope I'm around long enough to see my son and some other dudes in the big leagues here in the near future.
Just a few more, Jason, in the fourth row.
Dusty, congratulations.
Thank you.
In so many ways, it's incredible that your story converged with this team's story. On a night like this, does it feel at all like it was meant to be that you were the manager of this team, both for you and for them?
Well, I felt, when the scandal was exposed and then I was hired here, I felt it was meant to be. And I felt that the Lord worked through Jim Crane, because I don't think I was probably first on his list to be hired here, but some of the guys that I had played with and on his former players on his advisory staff indeed told him that I was probably the best guy for the job. And I definitely thought it was meant to be. I mean, big time. And so I welcomed it. It's tough being away from home. I haven't been home in 8 months. You know what I mean? So I jumped headlong into this job with the goal of trying to win.
Two more, Kim, and then Clinton.
Dusty, congratulations.
Thank you.
I wanted to follow up. You mentioned, I know you talk a lot about your mom and dad, but you also talk about Hank Aaron and some of the others. Can you talk about what you think Hank would say and just what it means knowing that you had all those guys in your corner?
Well, you know, I was always the kid. I was always the youngest guy. I was in big league camp at 18, 19 years old. I was in the big leagues at 19, so I was always around, you know, older players, older guys, and they all always had a mama, a black lady in the minor league town that I was in that wanted to be my mama, you know, that cooked for me and took care of me, and you know, and I really believe, you know, last year was the year of Hank Aaron, and you know, one of the worst days of my life was when my wife came in and woke me up in the bed and told me Hank had died, and that was right before spring training. And but last year being a year of Hank Aaron, the Braves supposed to win. You know, I didn't like it, but maybe they're supposed to win. And I'm like, okay, Hank, they won. Okay, now, so now you really got to root for me. I'm serious now. Yeah, and so it's like, yeah, I'm sure he's smiling and he's happy, and you know, all the players, like I said, that I played with and against. And I was a young Dusty. I mean, I'm sure they're all happy too.
We'll finish up with Clinton in the third row.
Jeremy said he thought your best skill was getting the best out of guys. You mentioned different types of motivation over the years. How has that evolved for you? And by extension, what has this season taught you about yourself as a manager?
Well, as you get older, it taught me to go home, go to bed. Where when I was much younger, I didn't like to hang out a little bit. You know what I mean? So that's what taught me to take care of myself. And this is what, you know, since my cancer and then my stroke, it made me appreciate life, and it made me take better care of myself. I got 2 grandchildren now, and I got a son, 23. So it's like, it just, you know, made me want to, you know, seize the day and try to be productive every day and treat. And then one thing I hear my dad always telling me: try to do the right thing. And sometimes that's tough. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you want to do the selfish thing, but the right thing, whatever that is in your mind, that's what I try to do.